Welcome back to the Global Business Report here on Arise News. Let's take a look at the latest figures from the Debt Management Office with respect to Nigeria's debt. We start at the federal level, and there it is. Total public debt, 46.25 trillion, pretty much a 17% year-on-year increase from what we had in 2021. And the Debt Management Office said a lot of this had to go towards plugging the budget deficit, increase in promissory notes, and the like. Let's take a look at the states. The states also increasing as well, double digits, 5.3 trillion naira, pretty much a 20% year-on-year increase for the states as far as their debt is concerned. Now, let's take a look at, we broke down pretty much every single one of these states. I want to take a look at Enugu State. So let's flip ahead. This is a number of states there. You can see the big jump here for Delta State in particular, 96.78% jump. But if we skip ahead to, Enugu is right there at the bottom of the screen, 69 billion in 2021 to 91.8 billion, so a 32.81% jump. Earlier on the morning show, we had an exclusive chat with Mr. Peter Mba. He just got a certificate of return from INEC, and he was talking about his private sector experience and how he plans to turn the economy of Enugu around. Let's take a listen.
I'm coming from a very strong private sector background, and project management and project development is my forte. So I understand how to engage the financial institutions to be able to get a head start in the area of funding, because again, what you want to show in your financing model is that, look, this project is viable. We're not just doing this for charity. If we're able, yes.
In other words, you are saying that we are going to borrow. Enugu State has very low IGR. Enugu State is heavily indebted. Unemployment rate in Enugu State is over 31%. So this revenue model that you are talking about to address all the projects you have outlined. So this revenue model is to go to financial institutions and borrow more money. Do I understand, is my interpretation correct?
Yeah, so borrowing in itself is not the problem. What is important is, do you want to borrow that money for consumption or production, right? That's the question you have to ask yourself. And is that money you're borrowing, is there a model that shows how you repay and how you also grow your economy, reduce the unemployment that you've just pointed at, and also get people out of that, those that are living in the pit of poverty, leave them out of that pit of poverty. So borrowing in itself is not the issue, is not a problem. But what we're saying is that we have sectors that we have identified as a growth productivity sectors. And those sectors, we are not performing optimally in those sectors. And we need to be able to scale things up. And in order for us to scale things up, we need to attract private sector investment. To do that, there are key infrastructure that the state must provide. And there are key things that the state must do to de-risk this investment flow. And in order for us to do those things, we may need to access funding, to be able to make sure that we provide that attractive environment for these investors to come, and for us to produce more, and for us to process what we produce, and for us to export those things. So it's a model that, basically is going to address all the things that you have pointed at, the unemployment, because from just doing, and I've only just narrowed down on one sector. We have a couple of other productivity sectors that we haven't delved into. We're just talking about agriculture, but don't forget that we also have tourism, we also have the commerce and industry, we have the energy and the mineral resources, we have the creative industry. There are a number of sectors we have identified as growth productivity sectors, and we would have to basically make it attractive for private sector to come and invest in those sectors.
All right, that was Peter Mba, who of course is the governor-elect for Enugu State. Joining us to discuss further from our Abuja studios, Kelvin Emmanuel, CEO, Dairy Hills Ltd. Kelvin, good morning to you. Thank you so much for speaking with us. Before we get to Enugu, I mean, let's start at the federal level. What do you make of this increase? What does it mean for the incoming administration?
Good morning, Rotus. Thank you so much for having me. Well, if you look at the fiscal position of the government, you look at the debt profile, 46.25 trillion federating units. You look at ways and means that is yet to be securitized, that is floating. You have 23.7 trillion because 2007 Fiscal Act was amended, Ways and Means was created by the Senate, and between 2007 and 2015, late President Umaru Yar'Adua and Jonathan borrowed only 869 billion. And then between 2015 and 2023, this government has taken 23.7 trillion in ways and means. Yeah, you look at that, you look at the fact that MPRO 18% plus 21% is what the federal government is paying on that floating debt that is yet to be securitized. When you add that, and you add the fact that in the non-recurrent debt expenditure for 2023 Appropriation Act, the government intends to borrow about 7.5 trillion, which was the reason why the government went to China Exim Bank as a bilateral loan to raise $22 billion in the rolling plan that was rejected, yeah, because the bonds market are on fire. Like Nigeria's credit rating at CAA1 is a junk rating, and nobody is touching Nigerian government Euro bonds, you know. You see that we're in a very dire strait because the sinking fund for 2023 at 46.25 trillion is 29% of the budget. If you add these two I've talked about, ways and means and non-recurrent debt expenditure for 2023, it goes to 77.45 trillion. And that sinking fund is going to rise in 2024 Appropriation Act from 29% to 43%. So Rotus, you see that even when the government removes PMS subsidy by June of 2023, and they save about 31%, which is what the PMS under recovery costs, you're going to shed half of that savings into paying debt. So the situation is very messy, and it's difficult to imagine how the Debt Management Office, the Budget Office, the Ministry of Finance are going to navigate out of this quagmire that we found ourselves in.
Wow. And as far as the ways and means, I mean, is the answer to essentially securitize it or grow more revenues as you try to pay it back?
Well, the damage is already done. They are proposing to securitize ways and means as a 40-year government bond, which will be passed to Nigerians in their taxes and royalty and revenue money from natural resources, and in their non-tax oil revenue. Nigerians will have to pay for it at 9% per year. They're also asking the Senate to approve that the market will buy the bonds, 40-year bonds with a 3-year moratorium, which means for the first 3 years, the government will not pay any coupon on the bond. It's going to be a difficult sell. So the damage has already been done. The government needs to securitize it. But before they securitize it, I'm calling on the Ministry of Finance and the Central Bank to accede to the demand of the Senate to provide records on how these monies were spent. 74% of that monies went into direct intervention programs. Show the Senate how you spent the monies. You know, so at the end of the day, you discover that if that Ways and Means, Section 38 of the CBN Act is not amended by the Senate, yeah, you find successive governments drawing from that window to cover budget deficit. Because you can imagine that between 2019 and 2022, the Central Bank of Nigeria advanced the federal government 15.2 trillion naira in Ways and Means. And Rotus, you realize that also within the same intervening period, the naira dropped from 365 to 755. So is there a correlation, Rotus, between excessive borrowing from Ways and Means window through quantitative easing and a devaluation and depreciation of your currency that has really accelerated exchange rate-induced inflation? Is there a correlation? Yes, there is a correlation. And it comes full circle back to haunt you. Because when your currency keeps dropping because you keep printing money, you don't have FX reserves to back, what happens is that the inflation, exchange rate reduced inflation keeps accelerating, and then you have to raise your MPR, your monetary policy rate, to align that inflation to interest yield curve, and the government needs to pay more money for its consolidated debt, which is what we're currently experiencing today.
It's a vicious cycle. And then you've also got the fact that we're import dependent. So that even places more pressure on the exchange rate. What about the states? I mean, they've got issues with, some of them, non-implementation of minimum wage, salaries and pensions being owed. How do the state governors, I guess, incoming and so on and so forth, how do they navigate their own way out there?
Look, apart from the fact that a lot of the state governors have completely mismanaged their finances, I will also tell you that a lot of the state governors inherited debts from their predecessors. You have a lot of states have like an irrevocable standing payment order, ISPO, on their federal account allocation account committee account, which means that every month as FAC is dropping, the creditors are debiting from source before it even gets to the state treasuries. Yeah. So it boils down to the fact that, look, we need to have fundamental discussions in Nigeria. We need to come back to the issue of fiscal federalism. We need to talk about the issue of states collecting their VAT and personal income tax, which is a lawsuit that is currently at the Supreme Court between the Rivers State government and the Federal Internal Revenue Service. We need to talk about amending the principles of derivation in Nigeria. Yeah, where the revenues generated are shared equally according to population, equity of state landmass, IGR and derivation, to only two things, IGR and derivation. You cannot say that you're sharing allocation to states based on their population and landmass, because it's not fair. If a state is producing more VAT, it should collect its VAT. It will make the other people to sit up. So these are fundamental arguments we have to talk about in answering the issue of the amount of FAC allocation and the amount of IGRA that states get to be able to tackle their fiscal position.
Okay, I can't let you go without asking you about Lagos. I don't know if we flip by and get to Lagos, but Lagos 698, 95, jumping to I think about 804, so 805 billion. Are Lagosians getting value for that high? Yeah, 807.2. There it is, 22.5% jump. Are they getting value for that amount of debt?
Lagosians are not getting value for the amount of debt because, I've always said Lagos has the smallest landmass. It has the highest IGR to FAC allocation at 76%, IGR to 25% FAC allocation. Lagos generated IGRs of about 548 billion naira last year. And Rotus, let me give you like a brief analysis. I'll pick one area. I'll pick the area of the red and blue line that the Lagos state government is currently working on. That project was commissioned in 2011, and I think about $1.2 billion was appropriated for it. And let me give you some numbers, Rotus. So, for example, what the steel that is used to construct rails is called a carbon steel. Yes? 1 ton of that is $1,630. And you need about 782 tons of that steel,
wow,
which will cost you about $1.2 million per kilometers to construct. Lagos has 37 kilometers. Now, similar projects that were constructed in other parts of the world. In 2009, the Asian Development Bank awarded a 75-kilometer single track contract in Afghanistan at the cost of $170 million. But the Lagos state government said that, and 1 kilometer cost them $2.2 million. But Lagos state government says that a 37-kilometer single track is costing them $37 million per kilometer.
Wow.
Which is bringing the contract cost to $1.2 billion. Till now, the project has not been finished. So it gives you an understanding of why, for example, the state in Nigeria that produces most IGR equivalent to the IGR of 26 states in Nigeria is not accountable to the taxpayers of the state. And cannot say that it has done well.
That's I like. Thanks for the analogy. Infrastructure is particularly a touch point for Lagos going forward. Kelvin, couple minutes to go. At the federal and state level, can either of them escape more borrowing? You heard that clip where Dr. Abati on the morning show was asking the governor-elect Peter Mba of Enugu State that, look, basically you're going to be borrowing more money. Is that inescapable at this point?
I listened to what he said. He has a good argument. However, I always talk about the issue of comparative advantage for states. Look, if you look at Enugu State, Enugu has phosphate. Phosphate is one of the 3 components for blending fertilizers. You have ammonium nitrate gas, you have phosphates, and you have muriate of potash. Until now, Nigeria imports both phosphates and muriate of potash for fertilizer blending, which is the reason why the cost of fertilizer has gone up by 3-fold and the cost of food production has also gone up. Enugu has a large deposit of phosphates. Yeah, what the governor can do is push for amendment as a sitting governor and a member of Nigerian Governors Forum. Push for amendment for solid minerals to be moved from the exclusive to concurrent, so that states can do private-public partnerships to ensure that they can get companies to produce phosphates and sell phosphates for blending of fertilizer. Look, last year, Rotus, OCP Morocco. Morocco, by the way, has the largest deposits of phosphates and output for phosphates in the world. Last year, the state-owned enterprise that produces phosphates for the government of Morocco made $11.2 billion from phosphates.
Wow.
Enugu has phosphates. Enugu also has oil and gas. So if the governor can ensure that he gets NNPC to explore and produce in their marginal fields, he's going to get 13% derivation and increase the allocation for Enugu states and tackle the debt problems that he currently has on the balance sheet of the state government. So those are 2 areas where I think they have comparative advantage and where I think the governor-elect Peter Mbah can focus on, rather than going to the bonds market to borrow more money and put the states in the same cycle of debt and interest payments on a monthly basis.
Kelvin Emmanuel, CEO, Dairy Hills. Kelvin, always a pleasure having you to talk about these issues. Thank you so much for your expert analysis. Thanks for your time. It's a global business report here on Arise News.